Hi, so I'm going to do a quick video on replacing the framing around your door. Because what I'm going to start out with is I'm going to go with this box cutter here and just cut along the sides here. The reason for that is you want to cut where the caulk is and the paint, because if you go pulling these off and the paint or the caulk's kind of latched on, still kind of glued on, then you can rip paint off and you'll have like a bigger mess. You'll have to touch up the paint and everything. So I'm going to do that over here, and I'm going to do that right here. All right, so I got my pry bar here, and I got a hammer. So I'm just going to simply stick this here, and then hit with the hammer and pull these out. So I'll do that all the way around. And I'll do little sections at a time. So you hit it with the hammer, like here. You just go down a little bit, hit it with the hammer more. And then once you get, a good chunk of it out, you can kind of just pull it, and it'll pry itself out. Okay, so I got that trim off. And so now what you should be left with is two surfaces. So you got your door frame here, and then your drywall here. They should be flush. When they install the door, they try to bring this flush with the drywall. That way you take your trim and you set it on these two surfaces here. Okay, so if so your drywall is one of the area, they're not flush all the way. Maybe they vary in certain spots. You may have to shim it. So say this drywall, say the door frame was out further than your drywall. So what you could do is you could put a shim in on this side. See, as you can see, there's a shim right here when they install this door in. You'd be doing the same thing. You could put a shim to kind of make sure that that door trim is flush. And where that's going to be important is where those two meet. If it's not sitting flush, you'll see that variation, there at the corner. So you want to make sure it's flush where it's seated at. Okay, I went ahead and took this opportunity, since the gap was exposed, to spray some construction foam in the gap there, and that way it's just a good insulation, and then also a barrier to for bugs to there's no more highways behind, at least around the door, for bugs to crawl through. So I put that in there, and so when it cures, it's just a matter of taking a straight edge, and it's foam, so it just cuts right off. Also, if you some of it bled onto the door, so you just take acetone or cotton ball, and just kind of cleaned it up. So that's the only thing I know that will clean up construction foam. I'm going to come through with my oscillating saw and just go ahead, and I'll show you real quick. Okay, now you can see that I used the oscillating saw and got it all cleaned up. And I also have a shop vac handy, because when you cut like that, it's going to put all kinds of foam dust all over the place, and it's kind of staticky, so it'll just clean all around your door and everything. So I had to get a shop vac and clean off the door, clean off the wall. So there it is. So I'm ready to get some trim on it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to measure the first post here. So the floor down up to about right here. Okay, so I want that post to go above the door, and then the header is going to sit, right along that paint line there. So I'm going to measure from the floor up to about right here. And I'm just going to do one side. And the reason for that is because I'm going to do one side, I'm going to fix it to the wall, and then I'll be able to get a level and put it on top of this post and put it all over here, and then have the level over here, and I will be able to mark where the posts are level at, because the floor, on both sides, of the door, you're not guaranteed that they're going to be, you know, perfectly level. So you want to make up for that with the length of your post. So again, I'll measure floor to about right here. I'll cut it, put the post trim in place. I'll get a level. I'll set it on top of there. I'll set it on top of there, and then I'll come over here with that, because it's going to be a longer level, probably like a 5-foot level, and I'll mark where it's level at right here, and then I can measure from that marked spot down to the floor, and then I'll go cut the post, and then when I put it in, then I should have 2 posts, the trim post, I guess you can call them, that are perfectly level with each other. And then when you put the header piece on, it will be sitting level. It won't be sitting, because you'll spot that if it's sitting, if it's off. So I'm going to go ahead and get that first measurement and go make that cut. Okay, before we put this first trim piece up, one thing is that this new shaker style trim is wider than what was originally there. So because of that, we're going to have to take out some of the baseboard here. So if you come over here to the new trim piece, and yeah, it's kind of scraped up. It's a scrap piece, but it can be painted. But this is what's going to go up there. So it's 3.5 inches. So come over here, and so we're going to look at the paint line there. So we're going to put the 3.5 inches there. Go over here and just mark on the baseboard. So now we know where to cut. So we're going to use oscillating saw again. In the past, you would have had to just pull this baseboard off and cut it with a saw, but these oscillating saws, and I'm sure there's maybe a hand tool that you could use, but this oscillating saw works miracles. Now, the thing is so because it's oscillating, to be able to just stick this on here and cut this in place, your line would be off. You wouldn't cut a nice straight line. So what I do is I just take a block here and I'll just put the block on the line. That way I can hold on to this when I'm cutting. And then I can just put the saw blade right there. And then it's just going to cut, it's going to oscillate on that line. So I'm holding this down and then I'm cutting. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're at the point now where we're leveling this first piece of trim. And as you can see, it's level. And so there's a little bit of gap between it and the door frame. That's fine because we'll caulk in there. But I'll hit it with the nail gun, so now that's level. And it fits in there real nicely where we just made that cut. We'll hit it with the nail gun. I'm using a Brad nail gun. Because these are smaller nails, kind of have to go gangster on it and fill it up with a couple of nails to, get this secure, but works just fine. Okay, so I got the level up here on top of the newly fastened piece of trim. And so now I'm going to go over here and see if it's level. And it is pretty much, yeah, it's level. So what I can do now, and I got to do this when I got 2 hands, is I come over here and I mark a line right there at the level, so that I can measure from the floor to that line, so to know what the other piece of trim over here on the right side needs to be. So that's what I'm going to do next. Got the line there, and definitely a good approach to take because the two sides were different. So this, by cutting the this piece of trim over here to the right size, I'll ensure that the header piece is nice and level. Everything will look nice and square. Okay, got this other piece of trim on. So the only problem now is that there is a big gap between the trim and the door frame. And the reason for that is because the drywall is not flush with the door frame. So I did draw a line over here, and one way to kind of make it flush is to take a box cutter, make a straight edge, and just cut a line and pull off the paper layer of the drywall. And there's a okay, so I did use the utility knife and kind of cut down into the paper on the drywall. And with the paint, the layers of paint in that initial layer of paper made a difference. But the other thing is that I took the oscillating saw and I just kind of I just ran it up the wall just like that and kind of cleaned some stuff off of it. So it's not perfect now, but like there's a gap in some locations, but it's enough to where I can put caulk in there, it'd be fine. But it was just there was too big of a gap earlier, so now it's better by taking that layer of paper off the drywall. So there may be a better way of doing this, but that's what I can come up with as a home do-it-yourselfer. Okay, I hit that with a level up there to see if it was level. It was off. Maybe my measurement was a little wrong, but that's where the oscillating saw came in and saved the day again. So it is level now. So I recommend if you're going to do this trim work, maybe have an oscillating saw with you. Measure the top, and I'm adding like a half inch overlap for the header piece. Okay, so I got the header piece on. It's nice and level. I did one little piece on top, so I'll show you that here in a minute. Okay, so now I came in and I've tapped in all my nail holes here. So I used a tapper, so there we go, and a hammer, and just tapped in the nail holes. A lot of them were good, but sometimes the nail gun doesn't push them all the way in, so you just got to go through and check them. And the next step from there is I got some spackling here. So this time is pink, and it dries white. So when it's dry when it's white. So I'm gonna use a putty knife. So this is my putty knife. So it's just a matter of going over, and I'll show you how I do this. A little bit on there, and the way I do it is I come in. So here's the hole right there, and I don't make it so you can do like that and make it flush. But the problem is when this dry, the spackling will contract, and so you'll have a little dimple, and then you have to come back and do it again. So what I do is I just I make it kind of high. So that way, as it dries, it'll pull in, but when I sand it, it'll be nice and flush because I got a little mount there. So just because I want less sanding, I'll just come around and clean it back. So yeah, I'll have a little bit more of this to sand, but I won't have to come through and do this twice. Okay, so now I'm going to caulk all the seams. So like up there, along there, and then in between where the trim meets the frame, along here between the trim and the drywall. So I will start down here. just do a little section here so you can see how I do it. So I try to make the hole as small as possible. That way I'm not as much material is coming out, and then that's less you have to wash off. So what I do is before I get started caulking, I'll grab a bucket, water, an old rag, and also keeping a dry old rag as well, so that I can dry things up once I wipe them down. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna put that. So I got the tip there open. I'm gonna put that open because it's angled, as you can see. So I'm going to put that open side, put it right there on the seam. Put some light on that. And then I'm just going to squeeze a little handle here. Oops. There. And then I'm just going to go up because I don't want to stay in one spot. Okay, so that doesn't look like a ton of material that I put down, so that should be good. And then I keep gloves on when I do this. So I am going to go here. And just make sure that I push all that caulk in. Take the rag here. And where are we at? Okay, so I'm just going to go in and just kind of wipe it down because it gets, all over here. Just kind of wipe both sides. Okay, it looks like it's off and up, and I just have caulk there in the gap. Okay, so now I'm going to use 150 grit sandpaper. So you can see the spackling is dry. So I'll sand that down, and I'll just sand it down with one hand. The other hand I'm holding shot vac, so I got my shot vac here. So I'll just hold the hose up to underneath where I'm sanding, and it makes it nice and clean. So the trim is all done, but there is something I want to point out for you to consider when you do yours. I just want to show you the trim that I completed opposite of the front door, and the reason why I wanted to show you this is because when I do my other trim in the house, I'm going to try a little different approach. So as you know, I fastened this post first, and then I would figure out what was level, and get the other post in place and the header in place. So this was already fastened. Doing it all over again, I'd make all my cuts before I fasten anything onto the wall. And the reason for that is so once I got the header in place, I realized that this trim is not on plane with the header. And so if I hadn't fastened this down and I could just held it in place, everything in place, I'd have saw that. And I would have realized, okay, I could just simply put some shims in here, and then to bring this up on plane. I didn't want it to be flush. I just wanted to bring it on plane. And so it, obviously the shims would have solved the problem. And then it's just a little bit more caulk on the side to cover that gap that the shims created. So just something to consider is maybe just make all your cuts first. Maybe have somebody help you hold everything in place and just see how everything sits in relationship to each other, and then you can make adjustments with shims as need be. Thanks, and God bless.